We're here in Lalua in Bangladesh, visiting a community that is being affected by climate change. What's been happening is the river has been expanding, their embankment has been going underwater. And people here have been telling us today about what kinds of experiences they're having with the government climate change adaptation programs. You can see here the school is being built, but much of this area will be underwater in a deep sea port in about 3 to 5 years' time. So people are feeling pretty frustrated and pretty angry.
As planned by the government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, the Payra Sea Port will meet the ever-increasing demands of our growing port needs and will engage all international seaborne trade in our central coastal zone. Most importantly, it will provide the facilities we need as Bangladesh embarks into an even better tomorrow.
So they really welcome this project. They thought this project is going to bring a lot of economic activity in their local region, and they're going to have a more diverse livelihood activities.
The location is also strategically placed to foster the development of infrastructure associated with economic zone, garment, pharmaceutical, cement, coal-based power plant, fish processing zone and fertilizer factories, oil refinery, container, bulk, general cargo, LNG, petroleum and passenger terminals, shipbuilding industries and much more.
Their hope turned into despair very soon. Once the project implementation was started, their main concern is people who lost their land, whether they will get enough compensation.
এখন বলতে যে পূর্ণবাসন দেওয়া হবে, আবাসন দেওয়া হবে, যাদের একেবারে ভূমিহীন তাদেরকে আবাসন দেওয়া হবে, যাদের জায়গা জমি আছে তাদেরকে পূর্ণবাসন দেওয়া হবে। কিন্তু কাজের বেলায় যাই দেখা যায় যে কিছুই নেই।
কত পার্সেন্ট লোক অ্যাকচুয়ালি যাদের জমি নিছে তারা ধরেন পুনর্বাসন পাইছে তাপবিদ্যুতের?
না, পায় নাই, পায় নাই, 1% হবে।
The land price in that area has really gone up since the announcement of this project. So the kind of money that they are receiving as a compensation, they can hardly buy any land in the nearby areas. And the second thing is, many people are losing their livelihood option like fishing and agriculture, and once this land is being taken by government and they are being rehabilitated to other part where the fishermen might not have any river to rely on their fishing activities, where the kind of agricultural activities they used to do, the rehabilitated area might not offer that kind of opportunity anymore. The biggest concern of the people were the lack of development activities, because all the other sector of the government, like the local government, even the NGOs, they all kind of started wrapping up their project, and they didn't carry on any other new project, thinking that this whole area is going to take up by the government for a new project, so there is no point of spending so much money.
All over the world, climate change is really affecting communities in ways that we never could have predicted, not only creating new challenges but exacerbating old challenges that have been around for centuries. What we really know in community development is that places in parts of the world that are affected by sea level rise are already facing additional challenges when their own governments are not supporting them in the ways that they need to be supported. For example, in some parts of the world, when sea level rise starts to cut into agricultural land or village land or farming land, governments then might use that as an excuse to rezone that land, either as military bases or for large infrastructure projects that might not necessarily benefit the communities that live there.
The suffering of the people has really increased a lot because they rely highly on the embankment, and the embankment has been broken for last 6-7 months and no one is taking care of it, whereas it was the responsibility of the local government to repair that embankment.
Government had constructed the embankment which is supposed to be there, which is broken now.
Because without this embankment, they are totally open to the sea, and the sea water is coming regularly and inundating the whole area. and their agricultural activities, fishing activities, all are getting affected because the saline water that is coming inside the villages. And some of them were saying that they lost how many acres of land in that river, and they are just going back and back and back. So they used to live somewhere there in the middle of the river.
Wow.
But now they have come here, and many of the people, they lost their land and everything. They are now living by the side of the embankment or by the side of the road. Most of them have migrated to Dhaka and ended up living in different slums and squatters. They are coming up with their own solution, consistently making contact with the local representative of the government to put the embankment first. And they're also trying to build their embankment by their own. They're sometimes building the roads, they're sometimes repairing the culverts, and they're taking initiative by themselves. But so far, they haven't received much support. They're also struggling to get the compensated money. So altogether, their situation is getting worse and worse day by day, and they lost all the hope that they thought they had a chance to bring change in their life, but this looks like all gone now.
One of the key things that large-scale infrastructure projects do is remove people from the bases and places in which they have access to their traditional livelihood. So community-based climate change adaptation around the world tries to build resilience into communities through making sure that their livelihood needs are met. Large-scale infrastructure projects often get put into different parts of the world on the promise that jobs will be provided, but many communities around the world are skeptical about whether those jobs will go to local people within the communities, and also are skeptical about relying on external companies, providers or employers for their everyday livelihoods, especially if people are used to building their own livelihoods from the land or from the sea, as they have been doing for centuries. So the key question for me in terms of climate change, development and resilient communities is, how do we build more resilient communities that can face the additional challenges that climate change are bringing, especially with regards to their livelihoods? What we do know in community development is that the best way to build resilience to climate change is not large-scale infrastructure projects which are built on the belief that we can control the environment, that we can predict what's going to happen with the weather, that we can predict what's going to happen with sea level rise. The best way to build climate change resilience all over the world is to build resilient communities. Communities that are resilient in terms of their access to food primarily and livelihoods. In most parts of the world, that means continuing access to agricultural land or to fisheries in order to support families in their normal livelihood practices. When large-scale infrastructure projects move communities on to different parts of the country, especially in countries facing overpopulation, those communities might not be able to access their traditional livelihoods. For example, communities that are built around fishing, if they are moved inland, may not have the skills needed to produce food as farmers, or may not have the skills needed to produce livelihoods as traders. So most communities want to build resilience not around new skills necessarily, but around the skills that they have already in their community, what they're already good at. So how do we build those resilient communities is one of the key questions for the future of climate change.